I think the concept of the gaming guild has been met with a lot of negativity in the last few years, especially as the sector went down post 2022. But guilds are alive and well. And if you think about it, a guild is nothing but a community of people who want to do something together. And that something in Web3 is playing games and earning money.
Wish you could access cash without selling your Bitcoin? Ledn makes that possible. The global leader in Bitcoin backed lending, Ledn has issued over $9 billion in loans since 2018 and never lost a single Satoshi of client assets. Why is a Ledn loan different? With custodied loans, collateral is not lent out to generate interest, no credit checks, funds in less than 12 hours, no monthly payments, repay whenever you want with zero penalties. And proof of reserves reports verified by a top accounting firm are published every 6 months. Ledn gives Bitcoin holders a secure, transparent way to unlock liquidity without selling. Learn more at ledn.io. That's ledn.io.
All right, welcome back. We are here with Gabby Dizon. Gabby, I am really excited. I've been wanting to talk to you literally for years, so I'm excited that we get to do this together, especially right now, because I think we're at this amazing moment in the evolution of Web3 gaming and just gaming in general as it starts to really creep into the Web3 and vice versa, Web3 going into the Web2 gaming side. And there is really no one better than you, I think, to talk about this. So welcome to Gen C. Really excited to talk to you.
Thank you. There's plenty to talk about.
Fantastic. So, Gabby, I would love give us your 60 seconds what you were doing before crypto.
Before I was in crypto, I was making games. I made games for PC, then mobile games, specializing in casual games.
Casual, like primarily mobile. Was that the kind of what you're focusing
Yeah,
on?
started on PC, but went on mobile before I got into crypto.
You know, I think it's amazing. Both when our producer and myself worked at the New York Times for many years, and the fact that more people right now are playing the casual games on the New York Times than are reading the news
Yeah, it's
says
crazy.
to me that yeah, it
It's
says to
become
me
a
like
game
hit a
company.
moment. They've become a game company, and I mean, I feel like TikTok's a game company. I mean, there's so many
Yeah.
folks. Would you have predicted that games would be this influential at this point, this early?
While in general, I fully believe the power in games to seep into people's everyday lives, the way in it manifests still surprises me a lot. Even the way 4 years ago, how Axie Infinity became a big hit in the middle of the pandemic. Even as I was a big supporter of Axie then, the matter to which like it became successful and still surprised me.
Yeah, let's talk about that for a second. So, I know you and the Sky Mavis team know each other really well. Axie had this amazing cultural moment that literally everyone in crypto, and frankly, a lot of people outside of crypto were talking about, which was this idea that people could start being rewarded for playing games in a token that ended up being spendable. And in parts of the world, especially in Asia, those amounts became significant,
That's right.
which I think led you to start the Yield Guild. But also, like, let's talk a little bit about when you started to see that happening, and what that felt at that time, and how the sort of ecosystem changed, even just from Axie doing what Axie was doing.
Yeah, so I entered the Axie community in 2018. So very small team, less than 500 people in the community, and it was people and primarily from the US and Europe actually then that were experimenting with novel ways to use NFTs. This changed during the pandemic when a lot more people from the developing markets, such as Philippines, found Axie and use it as a way to earn money during the pandemic. So in Axie, if you played and won a match, you won the SLP token, and of course, SLP could be paired with ETH on Uniswap, which was a super novel thing back then, but very common now. And so you could swap SLP for ETH for USDC, turn it into fiat, and it became real money. And yeah, that was such a revolutionary thing then using the DeFi primitives and putting it inside a game. And yeah, it was such a watershed moment in history.
And for our audience who doesn't know, Axie was sort of almost like a Pokemon character battle game, right?
Yeah, that's right. So you had three axes in a team, and then you would battle your opponent's three axes, and whoever would win the SLP tokens.
And there was this amazing video that I think our friend Leah Callan Butler put together that went very viral about all these people in Asia. I think it was the Philippines
That's
who
right.
were right, who were playing, and it was like mom and pops who owned stores. They were almost using it as a way when they were in their downtime to like have fun playing a game, and then that was being, as you mentioned, you could then swap that for fiat. So like, how much did it just take over that part of the conversation? I guess.
Yeah, so that documentary was called Play to Earn. We produced that along with Leah and her team at Infarsis. And we thought that telling that narrative of how people's lives were changed because of Axie and because of the community work that YGG was doing on top of that was something that would just be best told from the just from the stories of the people themselves, right? And yeah, it became a big hit. It made it all the way from a lot of people are investors, people who wanted to work for us, and it became our calling card for a few years.
And I think it was, I mean, it went everywhere, as you mentioned. I think it was Packy McCormick wrote a big story about it on Not Boring, which was
That's
shared
right.
everywhere. So, right, shout out to Packy for doing that. And that's where I think I first heard about you and these guilds, because I think what happened, if correct me if I get this wrong, was that the price of entry, getting a character, ended up getting higher and higher and
That's correct.
became a little unattainable for people in markets. So you guys were like, we'll buy characters, we'll help you play and split the proceeds. Is that right?
Yeah, so how YGG started was that we took a little bit of seed money and then we started buying Axies and then we created a simple platform inside of Discord so that we would lend them to guild leaders or community managers. And then we would train the community managers how to play the game. And then the leaders or the guild leaders would then recruit people, teach them how to play the game and win, and then lend them the Axies that we lent their managers, and that's how these guilds scaled. So if you're an individual community manager, you may have really good community building skills, but you probably don't have a tech team and you may not have the capital to buy these axes so that you could scale. So we provided those, and that is how we grew during 2021.
I remember, and I think it was 21, maybe early 22. You were in New York and you were on a panel. It was down in Chinatown. I don't remember exactly where, but I
Oh,
remember
yeah, yeah,
someone,
yeah. That was in 2021, late 21.
yes. And I remember someone got up at that event and said to you, you know, how do you call Axie a game? It's nothing compared to Counter Strike or kind of a top tier console game, and it's not even that fun. And I remember you just came back and you said, well, it's more fun than being an Uber driver,
That's correct.
and and that moment stayed with me for until meeting you now for the last 4 years, because I thought that was such a great framing of, one, just the privilege of someone saying, well, I get to play the games I want, and they don't understand the economic conditions of some of these folks in these places you're in, but also the fact that anything, casual games can be a way that you could, change your life, right, or change your community if you
Absolutely.
were committed to it, which again I think really reinforced the yield guild opportunity of saying, hey, you can't get started, let us help you. What's the state of the guilds now?
So guilds are still around. We actually launched an on-chain guild protocol last year to help guilds manage their members and have their own multi-sig wallet. I would say that guilds in general are similar to small to medium enterprises. They recruit members and then they do different things so that they can earn. Some of them are playing games, some of them are creating content. They may be in DeFi, trading meme coins, but a lot of these are some of them are very loosely organized, maybe a bunch of people and their friends. And then some of them try to be more professional and try to scale. So there's kind of a wide range. I think the concept of the gaming guild has been met with a lot of negativity in the last few years, especially as the sector went down post 2022. But guilds are alive and well. And if you think about it, a guild is nothing but a community of people who want to do something together. And that something in Web3 is playing games and earning money.
And I'm interested in sort of seeing where we're at today, but I do remember there was this moment, which you must have thought was amazing, where the Axie tokens hit 150. There was a big hack, I believe, that also happened,
In
which
22, yeah,
started the downfall a little bit. And I think the tokens are somewhere sub $10 right now, but there's still a pretty sizable chunk out there, and it sounds like people are still playing. I remember that people started with a narrative saying, "Oh, maybe play to earn is dead," but I think it's still, frankly, in its beginning, right? Like, to call a whole new game primitive done in a year doesn't make sense to me. So what's the state of play to earn right now?
Yeah, it's crazy where crypto is very narrative led. I think in 21 we hit on something that worked that was very early, and people thought that, oh, this is going to take over the world. And maybe the form factor wasn't right, maybe the economics weren't right. And then everything went down, and now people are calling it dead. I do agree with you, Sam, that I do think it's still early. I think that once the right business model is found, then it can take off again. And sometimes it just takes a few years to get this right, right? So I don't think that you can find the solution early. You know, whether you're doing AMMs or exchanges or games, it takes a while to find the right formula to scale.
You say that, and I think a lot about the New York Times, right? And, crossword puzzles, right? Crossword puzzles are very simple. They are something people absolutely love. They can be really hard or really simple, depending on which ones you do. But where the gaming industry is now for the New York Times compared to where it was, when they were a newspaper that might have had one crossword puzzle, it's a completely different universe. I think a lot of different platforms have seen that evolve. So I guess the I never count gaming out. I don't know why a lot of people do. What do you think are the kind of newer primitives that are coming out? Is it still all play to earn, or you're seeing like just these different reward systems? At Consensus this year, we had Off the Grid from Gunzilla, we had Parallel, we have some folks who are making some pretty interesting, sophisticated gameplay. Is that where you think this is going? Like, I guess, yeah, give us the state of today in Web3 gaming.
Yeah, I would say that broadly, there's two types of games being made now. One that you could call Web 2.5, which are games that are targeting mainstream gamers and then have some kind of Web 3 economy at the back. Off the Grid is a great example of this, Parallel, a lot more. And then there are games that try to cater to Web 3 natives. And YGG with our casual degen lowland is one of them. Axie is one of them. Pixels is another one of them. So you can see broadly that those are the different attempts. Like, do we bring crypto to the mainstream gamer with crypto underneath, or do you go full crypto and using all of the primitives to offer it to existing crypto users? I don't think that one is inherently better than the other, but they are distinctly very different strategies that you have to pursue.
In gaming, is there a similar narrative that we're seeing in some of kind of more mainstream crypto? I'm thinking of folks like Blackbird or what TYB is doing, where it's like we're not talking about crypto, but we're kind of just running it on the rails. In the gaming space, are we starting to see any studios start to like build in some underlying crypto?
Yeah, I think probably the closest that you see are games like NFL Rivals, where it's on the App Store, it's with a major franchise, and there's crypto at the back. But unless you're in crypto, you probably wouldn't know that. So yeah, that's definitely already happening right now.
So you mentioned Lowland. I've been looking at your all your socials, and it seems like a lot of people are very excited and are playing this. Tell us a little bit about this game specifically, and you guys are the publisher on this, correct?
That's correct. Yeah, we made it, and we're publishing it.
Yeah. So tell us about the gameplay and who's
Yeah.
using it, how are they using it?
Yeah, so development started last year. We've been investing and buying assets in different games, hundreds of games, evaluated hundreds more, maybe over 1,000 at this point. And we thought that there was kind of a gap in what people were making and what crypto users wanted. First of all, there's not a lot of quote unquote Web3 gamers. There's a lot of people in crypto. Binance, I think, has a few hundred million accounts. I don't know exactly how many. And if you think about it in some way or in the other, somewhere or the other, everyone is in crypto because they want to make money, whether yeah, trading in an exchange or holding Bitcoin or trading perps, meme coins, NFTs. And so we came up with this persona of the casual degen, someone who might be trading, might not consider themselves a hardcore gamer, but then would like to play games with some casual speculative loops. And so that's what we delivered with Lowland. It's a little bit like Monopoly Go, with a difference in that there is a mode, the premium mode, where you can win YGG token rewards. And yeah, so since we launched 3 weeks ago, the user numbers have been really great. And I think it's vindicated the casual degen strategy that we're pursuing.
It's so funny when we talk about this. I have a friend who probably has been playing the same version of Candy Crush for like 10 years now. She's probably on, I don't know, level 6,000. And I think about just the not even hours, days, maybe months she's put into this. And the fact that all she's done is been a mechanism for them to deliver advertising to,
That's right. Yeah.
compared
Yeah.
to like, what you guys are building, where, hey, if someone put that much time in, they'd actually be probably doing pretty well. And so, is that part of the idea? Is how do we just create these sort of snackable, addictive games, and then create a reward system around the YGG token?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So you can play the game, and there's a game where you don't need to buy anything. And then if you reach a certain point level, then you can enter a raffle and win some tokens. And then there's a premium mode where you'd have to pay for entry, but then you have the opportunity to earn the tokens as well. So it's up to you. Actually, most people aren't paying for access, which means it's a completely free to play game. But then if you wanted to pay and have the opportunity to earn the tokens, then it's available.
So let me see if I understand this. So someone comes in, there's no upfront commitment, they just
Correct.
get to play, and then it sounds like you guys are doing a bunch of contesting to continually reward them with getting them into the paid ecosystem.
Yeah, that's right. Obviously, we make money when people get into the paid ecosystem, but something
Hmm.
I've learned from free to play in that maybe only 1 to 5% of your users are paying money, but then that could mean millions of dollars a month. Or yeah, with games like Candy Crush, probably 95% plus of your users aren't paying anything, but you can still build a pretty massive business. So we've kind of taken the same approach here.
Right. And I believe you guys build Lowland on Abstract, right?
Yeah, we've partnered with Abstract, and they've been a great chain to work with. One of the things that differentiates them is that they really take the chain as kind of an app store approach. They don't take any cut on in-app purchases, which is great because Apple takes 30%, and they make money, for example, when you swap one token for another. So they kind of have their own native decks, which I think is a really great model. And Abstract has been the home for what they call like just the spenders. So people like there's not a lot of DeFi TVL there, but there is a lot of spending. And yeah, that's been great for us as a crypto native application. I think yeah, like it's a great place to launch a crypto app.
And it seems like the Pudgy Penguins are all over the game as well, at
Yeah,
least in some of the partnership branding. You mentioned something which I think is really interesting, which I think we should dive into a little bit more. You said there's not a lot of like DeFi TVL happening on Abstract, but there's a lot of people spending.
that's right.
To me, that's the right way to look at where we want to be in the consumer space, right? We
Yeah,
want people who are comfortable making small payments, repeatedly if they're enjoying what they're doing, and really rewarding creators like what you guys are in being able to get into the system. And of course, some of them get to be paid out if they play their game right and play their cards right. So is that, in the gaming side, I assume most people who play games are spenders in some way, either attention or
that's
dollars. So
right.
it feels like that's more native anyway. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah. So we definitely want people who are spenders. For me, spending $1,000 in my game is much better than having $100,000 in TVL. And I think it's somewhat new for crypto itself. But if you're coming from an app store, app creator background, it's something that you're used to. So, interestingly, we're bringing more and more a lot of the discipline we've learned creating free to play games in app stores, the Web2 users, and kind of adapting that to a Web3 publishing model.
Gabby, the number of Web3 games that have come out in the last 4 years, a lot of them sort of were announced and haven't really gone anywhere. There's a number of them, like we've talked about yourselves, plus others. I know Animoca's done a ton that have created successful games. If someone wants to get into the game space, especially in Web3, what do you think they need to know to participate?
Yeah, very good question. So there's been a lot of games enter the ecosystem, and a few of them are actually quite fun. Although I don't think that a lot of them have answered the questions for why would someone buy their token. So for any game developer coming in, I just have to emphasize that these are two completely separate things. Like one is your game fun, and two, would someone buy a token associated with your game? These are two very, very different things.
Okay, so make it fun, but also create a reason. It
Yep.
sounds like for people to get in, and it sounds like I've followed your career, a consistent iteration of it feels like that's part of the opportunity is that you're never just saying we're releasing our game and going. You're constantly looking at what the market wants, what your players want. Is that
Absolutely.
right? Philippines, we know we have like Meme Land and Animoca in Hong Kong. We saw what Sony is doing in terms of their Sodium chain, which I know also has some gaming elements. What is it about that region of the world that seems to always be just frankly 5 years ahead when it comes to the gaming ecosystem? Is there something about Asia that gets gaming better than let's say the US does?
I wouldn't say it gets it better, but there's a very sharp divide over how Asia and the West treat gaming. The West, particularly US, treats gaming primarily as a pastime and going more for maybe the graphics experience. Maybe you're playing it on your couch in the big screen. And the US is a lot more resistant to new business models, especially just monetization models in games. So, for example, for a very long time, free to play wasn't accepted in the US, and it'll probably like took League of Legends before free to play was accepted, right? And in Asia, this is where a lot of the new business models come from, like the gacha mechanics, for example, play to earn as well in Southeast Asia. And so there's a lot of acceptance to just trying out new things, especially business model wise. And I think after it gets proven out in Asia, then it gets packaged in the West in a Western looking game, probably made by a Western developer. And once that breaks through, then that gets accepted. But before that happens, there's a lot of resistance to it.
And we shouldn't forget that the modern gaming industry, was Nintendo, Sega, like it all came out of Japan
Absolutely.
and that part of the world, right? So it's not surprising to me that there's always this sort of again more forward-looking approach. I think in the U.S. people feel more comfortable in the things they know, right,
Hmm.
versus taking that chance on something that may be uncomfortable but actually can be really rewarding,
Hmm.
whether it's gaming or crypto. So do you predict that we'll start to see more inroads into traditional gaming, or do you think Web3 crypto gaming just always is its own category?
So I think that crypto itself starts becoming more mainstream rather than hiding crypto elements mainstream. The really interesting thing that's happening in the US that I'm tracking right now, more than the like Web3 games going mainstream, is how mainstream stablecoins are getting. So that is
Mm.
actually the thing that makes me most bullish now that Stripe has acquired Privy, and then now you can add USDC payments to anything. I think that a lot of businesses will shift from credit card payments to offering stablecoin based payments where you don't have to pay the issuer, you don't get any chargebacks. It's just a better UX in general. And as USDC payments become more and more mainstream, guess what? My Web3 game, which is targeted towards Web3 natives because the payments are in USDC, it starts becoming more mainstream as well.
That's such a good point, Gabby. There's this thesis that I go with, which is for really most of humanity, we the geographic borders are what defined our states, right?
That's right.
In our countries, and the internet has created this sort of amorphous, the world's largest network state, as opposed to a nation state, and a digitally native collective needs a digitally native currency. And so for me, that what you said is hits so on the head there. And I want to ask the question, do you think that there's going to be, are we going to see gaming start to launch their own stable coins? Like, is it about integration where there can be, whether you're playing in the Philippines or you're playing in Chicago, that you're still playing for the same points that are valued the same? Or do you think it's always about, let's have an abstract currency that we swap into our local?
Okay, that's a really good question. And I think one of the biggest philosophical arguments between a lot of games and crypto applications in general is that are we going to price in-game assets, in-app assets in stablecoins, in USD basically, or in the native token? And we have a very kind of strong opinion on this. We think that if we want to reach mass adoption, we should price in USD, and you see this in our game when you pay and buy roles to play the game. You can pay in either Ether stablecoins, but it's priced in USD, And then when you get your token rewards, you get YGG tokens, but it's also priced in USD. Yeah,
Hmm.
I define a quote unquote Ponzi game as something that is priced in its own native token. And it's not necessarily a bad thing, but now it becomes a game of how early you are. Because if you're early, then you buy an outsized amount of the tokens and the price goes up. Then people are afraid to come in. Oh, am I late? You see this all the time, right? And then, oh, like this whale can bump on me. And so these games still happen all the time, but it becomes a game of how early can I buy in. And with games that are priced in USD, now people aren't thinking of, oh, like this game released on day 30, am I too late? Everything is priced in USD, which means that I can actually build a long-term scalable business out of it.
Within gamers, because I've heard this before, I'm sure you've heard it a million times, that gamers seem to think, $5 in Taiwan or the Philippines is different than $5 in Chicago based on salaries, hourly, daily, weekly. And so people believe it's easier for people who can buy achievement to game the system.
Mhm.
I know, I think when we spoke to Teddy over at Gunzilla, he was saying, what you're really buying is cosmetics. You're not really, you're not buying as much of the ability.
Uh-huh.
So do we have to take that into account, I guess, to make sure that it doesn't overly favor someone who just might have some extra spendable income?
Yeah, yeah, good question. It really depends on the game design. This is another philosophy in which, like, a lot of games in Asia differ from the West. The West is really like allergic to being able to buy an advantage in the game. That's why a lot of what you are buying are purely cosmetics, and any like you should have basically like your skill or things that you can earn in game that may have better stats by killing monsters or progression. While especially in Chinese games, you can see that you can basically buy progression, you can buy the better sword, and it may cost a lot of money. So yeah, again, I wouldn't say one is inherently better than the other, but if you're from the West, you really do not like pay to win. And in many cultures in Asia, like it's just the norm, like it's just like life.
That's a great point. All right, Gabby, my final question for you is, as we look forward, especially around these sort of still play to earn or even play to win mechanics, and we think of the intersection of AI, it feels like it's not hard to think that someone's going to write bots that,
Absolutely.
have 1,000 accounts playing all at the same time. How do we look at, what makes us inherently human and the fun of playing versus people who are just out there trying to drain the system of as much resource as possible?
Yeah, one of the reasons why a lot of the early play to earn designs failed was that they didn't really account for the bots that are playing the game. Someone came out with a photo of a secret office somewhere in Southeast Asia which had 30,000 phones playing your favorite games and yeah, extracting a lot of value out of them. I think that it's your failure as a game designer if you do not account for this. Like for example, in our game, if you want to earn tokens, then you have to pay to get in the first place. So once you pay, I don't care if you're a bot or not. Like if you're a bot, as long as you bring your $5, I'm happy to take it,
Right,
right?
right. So
Yeah.
you're not worried that at some point, that bot is actually extracting 50 for every 5 it puts in.
Well, it has to be within the bounds of your game design. So it's a game design challenge. Crypto will
Yeah,
exploit every edge case that you haven't thought of and basically like kill you for it. So it forces you to become a really much better designer of systems, of incentives, of loops, and especially in crypto, right, where one mistake can basically like drain you of millions of dollars, or as you saw in the Bybit hack, like billions of dollars. So the stakes are so
hmm,
much higher, but I think that it is still fundamentally a game design or an incentive design problem.
got it. All right, Gabby, thank you for spending time with us today. This is really great to catch up with you, hear what's happening in the game system. Congrats on Lowland and
Thank you.
everything that YGG is doing, and hopefully we will run into you soon.
Thank you.